Well, the best place to start is to acknowledge that you said, "Ain't that the truth?" Which is, you're officially a true Texan now.
Yes.
It's like the most Southern comment that I've ever heard. You were like, "Ain't that the truth, Holly?" In your New
It's
Zealand accent. That was amazing.
it is every day I'm finding myself like worlds colliding. I said howdy to someone this morning. It's just
Really? Are
yeah.
you are you wearing your boots? Your
No,
was it?
not today actually. No, I need to wear my boots again.
Welcome to the Leader Pulse podcast, the podcast with actionable insights for leaders revolutionizing the world of work. In our last episode, we got to hear from Matt and Elizabeth Bryant, the Chief People Officer at Southwest Airlines, all about what does it really mean when we say that people development drives performance for your business. In today's episode, Matt and Elizabeth unpack what it looks like to have Elizabeth's resume. From the outside, it can look like it's just all the way up and to the right, but Elizabeth dives into what it really looks like to have 14 different roles at an organization and develop yourself and the team around you over time. So let's take a listen.
I think a lot of people outside looking in can be envious of your story and your journey. I want to be a manager one day, and then I want to go all the way up to become a chief people officer. I think inside looking out can sometimes be a little different than outside looking in. What would you say to those folks that would aspire to have a journey like yours, a story like yours, to go from, I mean, you've been there right from the jump and you've gone all the way through.
Right.
Any thoughts around that incredible growth trajectory?
Sure. I think I've had 14 different positions here at Southwest. And along the way, I never anticipated staying here. My
Right.
goal was not to have a long-term career in one place.
Right.
I didn't set out to do that, but I was able to continue to grow here. And that's been a key for me. I've been surrounded by leaders and team members who invested in me, who saw things in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. And so I think my advice would be to always surround yourself, find a mentor that can help guide you, find champions in the workplace that
Yeah.
can speak on your behalf when you're not there. Always find people who will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
As you grow in leadership, it's really important that you have people around you that can help you discern what's working, what's not working, giving you that clear and honest feedback. And so, again, I think it is about people. It is about surrounding yourself with the right people. I'm typically smarter than yourself, which I have done for my entire career, and certainly proven to be effective.
I love that. I love that.
Matt, I love that you asked Elizabeth this question because it's something that, I mean, of course, we think about this at Leader all the time because our mission is to develop leaders. But I am having this conversation constantly with people, even on our team, and then our customers are trying to figure this out of like, how do we provide a pathway of development for the people on our team who love what we're doing, want to be a part of it. And it's such a tension. I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I feel the tension of like, yes, I want to promote you, but we don't have a spot open right now. So
Right.
how do we do that? And I think from the outside, you look at someone like Elizabeth, who is the Chief People Officer at Southwest Airlines, and it's like her career just looks so perfect and beautiful. But it's how, like, how she said, she's had 14 roles. Like, it has been messy and a winding road. It's not a perfect line. So I'm really glad you asked her that question.
I think ain't that so true, Holly? Our career trajectories can look similar to the trajectory of like an organization or a team. At a macro level, if you zoom out and just look at the year or the quarter, it all looks up and to the right, like a very seamless graph. Or like someone's career, you look at their LinkedIn, it just looks like promotion, 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 promotion. But if you go micro and you go in and look at the days or the weeks or the months, it doesn't look like that at all, like
At
very
all.
rarely. And I know that's both yours and I's journey. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what do you do when the promotion is outside of your control? And I want to talk about is development always associated with promotion? Like, if I want to be developed and I don't get promoted, does that mean I wasn't developed? So we can unpack this for days and days and days.
Yes.
Is the best place to start.
Well, the best place to start is to acknowledge that you said "Ain't that the truth," which is you're officially a true Texan now.
Yes.
It's like the most Southern that I've ever heard. You were like, "Ain't that the truth, Holly?" in your New
It's-
Zealand accent. That was amazing.
It is every day I'm finding myself like worlds colliding. I said howdy to someone this morning. It's just
Really?
yeah.
Are you wearing your boots?
No, not today actually. No, I need to wear my boots again.
That is so funny. Oh my goodness. Okay, but I derailed us. Yes, lots of good places to start. So I think let's start with I mean, I think we both have stories that resonate with Elizabeth's. So
Yeah, I can go first. I don't yeah.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
So a lot of people have asked me, I've been in technology now for 11 years. I joined as an entry-level SDR role, which is like a cold calling, early entry-level sales role. And then 8 years later was a CEO. And so I often get the question, how do I get your journey? But I want to do it fast, even faster than that. It's like, I want to be a CEO one day. How can I get there? And because when you look at my LinkedIn, it looks very linear. But I was once promoted to a manager role. And then we had 2 rocky months of sales results. And because I was the leader, I was the one to blame, which fair enough. And so the executive team got resume hungry and they wanted to hunt around and look for the fancy person that's done it before. And so they put me back into the IC role, working alongside the people I was just leading. And I went back to a sales role for a year before that person got the boot. And then I was elevated back into a leadership role. And no one ever tells that part of the story. And we can go deep into all about how that feels, because I know you've been through that too, and it is the worst. But no one hears that part of the story. We only talk about the part that it was up and to the right. And that's just, it's not reality. And at least not in most cases. So my journey certainly was not the straight line. It was filled with lots of setbacks and moving left, right, up and down. And it is filled with a lot of heartache, and it's filled with a lot of, a lot of indignation. Well, if I'm loyal to you and you're not loyal to me, then I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think we have a lot of that sometimes. And in hindsight, I'm so grateful I didn't throw in the towel and just jump off.
That is the key right there, Matt. So let me share a couple stories, because that's something you and I have in common, that we both stayed. And I think that's a huge lesson that I've learned, that I hope people can take away from this. So in a previous organization, I got to report directly to the CEO for many years, and obviously loved that. I mean, it was like we made quick decisions. We were on the same page all the time. It was so, and we were in building mode. So it was just, that's like my favorite part of a business is really being able to be in that fast growth, like scrappy, figure things out. And so then we got to a point where we had gotten big enough to where we really needed to bring in a more seasoned COO. And so we did some restructuring to where I then reported to this new COO rather than the CEO. And it was difficult for many reasons, but a lot, for myself, just a lot of my pride, right? It was like, it felt like a demotion. It was like, why do I need, like, this is working. Why do I need to report to the COO? And not to mention all of the frustration that can come with bringing someone in from the outside. I don't know if you felt this way when you went back to the IC role and they hired a manager from the outside, but like, you're the one with all of the
institutional knowledge.
Yes.
Like,
and you're like,
now I'm training you. Like, wait a second.
Like, I got demoted, but I'm the one telling you how to do your job. Like, that's so frustrating. And then here at Leader, you and I walked through a season together where, I was in the most healthiest state I'd ever been. 2022 for me was a really big year. January of 2022, I was tired of not being in shape, and I had just was working all the time, and which is my own fault, because I can be a workaholic and find my identity in work. So January of 2022, I was like, I'm going to make changes. And so I went on this health kick. I got super healthy in every area of life, was crushing it at work. And we already had planned for me to be able to build out this new team, which was really exciting. Because as I just shared, I love building things. And so I was excited about that. And then one day you called me and you were like, I think this was on like a Friday. And you were like, hey, Holly, how about not just leading the marketing team and building this other new account management team, how about you also lead the sales team, which was like
Dream
30
come
people.
true.
Yes, it was like 30 people. And it was literally, I mean, we talked about this 3 years ago. I kind of shared with you, like, that was my dream job to lead all of the go-to-market, team one day. And so I was over the moon and thrilled and so excited. And then got into it. And the first thing that happened was I slid back into all of my old habits. I mean, I was working around the clock. I stopped exercising. I was skipping meals because I'd forget to eat lunch. I mean, all of the things that got me, to the state that I was trying to get out of back at the beginning of 2022. At the same time that a lot of things out of my control were happening too, but I took them on so heavily that, like, that was when our economy started to tank and so many organizations were facing headwinds that they'd never seen before. And so anyway, long story short, it just got to a place where I personally was not driving results that I wanted to for the company, but also wasn't in a healthy place. And so I ended up giving that team back to you, which did feel like a demotion, and I mean, I felt like this huge failure of I had, on paper, that was like my quote unquote dream job, and I didn't cut it, and so, but like, to your point, you look at my LinkedIn and it's like director of business development at this other company, and then VP, and then SVP, and then CMO, and you don't see the squiggly lines and the messiness of what it takes to get there. But
Yeah.
I know that was a long story, but number one, I remember the former organization, I made the distinct choice to stick around. I told myself, I'm going to stick this out for as long as I'm learning something.
Yeah.
And
And Holly, let's quick pause. When you say
Yeah.
stick around, it wasn't a few weeks.
no,
Because a lot of people would be like, yeah, Holly, like, I stick around. I turned up on Monday too. You turned up for how much longer?
No, I think it was at least a year. I think it might have been 2, which is
I
wild.
think it was 2 years in
I think it
hindsight.
was 2 years. Yeah. So that was a big decision for me, because I thought, what can I learn from this? This person has a lot of experience. They have done many different roles and all over the world. Like, I have a lot to learn from them. And then the same thing here at Leader, when I said, I'm gonna stick around and as long as I'm learning something. And then of course it took a couple months. Those first few months were really hard when I gave that team back to you. But it was just in May, I had like a perspective shift of what would it look like if I went into every day with a perspective of experimentation and learning, and not black and white success versus failure. And what I've shared with the team is that was revolutionary for it. It sounds so simple, but that was when, again, I started crushing it at work. We got pregnant a couple months later. Like, all of these things started falling into place when I stopped holding so tightly to my identity being wrapped into this perfect, resume or career path. And so it's so counterintuitive. We feel like we have to do everything perfect and hold so tightly to all the results along the way. When for me personally, what I've learned is when I do what Elizabeth said, which is like, surround yourself with great people, show up and do your best every day, figure out where you can learn and be developed. That's when results tend to fall into place. So we got real vulnerable there, but I hope it was helpful for somebody.
And because you're not going to brag on yourself, Holly, let me throw a few sort of encouragements about you, your way, but also for everyone else hearing. During that process, you had 3 mentors, is that right? At least 2.
Yeah, I worked with 2 different coaches.
You paid for executive coaching.
Yes.
And you did like a poll survey and personality assessment, and someone sat down with you over the course of 6 different
months.
sessions and walked you through it.
Yep.
You took some vacation, but you didn't like sit around and do nothing. You went right back to work the next week. No one else around you outside of me would have known you were having a bad day. No one would have saw Holly with like tail between her legs, like Eeyore, like complaining, woe is me. Like, none of that happened. And so there was no violent pity party happening through that journey. You put on a brave face, and no one would have known that you were grappling with what you grappled with. And I think that's the other parts of the journey that I think is so important for people to recognize is being steadfast and not giving up, and having that grit and determination is so important. And by the way, if you're an executive out there and you want to hear more about the other end of the equation, one of my most happiest, fulfilling days as an executive was when I was promoting Holly to take on sales. And one of my hardest days and most difficult days as an executive was then taking it away. And so everyone out there might be thinking like, this doesn't seem, why they seem so friendly when they went through all this drama. It's like, it was not fun.
No, and we had
Right?
I remember there was like awkwardness, and I was like, Matt, we need to sit down. Like it was like, because it was weird, and
It was weird.
but we were committed to working through it together. And
I'm so glad we are, because 9 months later we're doing a podcast.
yeah, here we are. I know, right? We had to have something to talk about on here.
Yeah. No, when you peel back the layers of these conversations, they're never as simple as it looks like from the outside. And at the end of the day, when you're focused on what's best for the team, when you're focused on what's best for the organization, focus on what's best for the customer, and you just wait for a hot minute. Not all the time. We're not saying this story works for everybody, but I think more often than not, just hanging in there and trying to see the forest through the trees is so important.
So important. And that's not to say that you should always stick around.
That's a good point.
When things are unhealthy or toxic, or you're working under a leader that is, manipulative, or all the things, like I don't want people to hear me say like, oh, I need to stick in a toxic environment. And that's where I just want to draw people back to the question. For me, what I learned through all of that is it should be, am I still learning and growing? And if the answer to that is yes, and it's an overall healthy, no organization is perfect, no leader is perfect, but overall in a healthy organization, then I think it's good to stick around. But if the answer is no, I'm not learning and growing, I feel I'm stuck, or I'm, decelerating, or my leader or my organization is unhealthy, then that is a time where you should probably look to go elsewhere.
So true. Hey, Holly, can you touch on the distinction between development and promotions, and if they're synonymous or not?
Well, and that was a big lesson for me, right? Like I spent, in that story that I just told, I spent 9 months trying to prove that I deserved this promotion,
Right.
Whereas then after that, when I had that perspective shift, and it was like, actually, what can I learn, and how can I develop myself, and what skills can I grow in? Choosing development rather than a promotion. What's ironic is then I got promoted, right?
Right.
So first off, I want to speak to all the individual contributors out there, or wherever you are, maybe you're a manager or an executive that wants to get promoted. I think that mental shift is critical. Focus on developing yourself first, and the promotion will follow.
Right.
But in my experience, maybe it's just me or the way I'm wired, but when you're obsessed with the promotion part of it, you often will, because people can tell when you're like,
when you're doing it for the title, when you're doing it for the spotlight, when you're doing it for yourself, people know it's icky.
But when you're like, hey, boss, here's a book that I read last week, and here's what I learned from it, and I would love your accountability to help me get better at this thing, or here's a project that I think we should take on because I see this opportunity, like, then your boss is like, holy cow, like this person's running circles around me and is clearly motivated to develop and improve themselves. So that is critical. And then I think as the leader or executive or manager listening to this who's trying to develop a team, number one, what I've learned is, especially with the next generation, but I think this is true for almost anybody. I mean, I think most of us wake up every day and want to get better at something. I don't think many of us are just like okay with the status quo. But to make sure that we're talking about development in every one-on-one, and that does not mean it has to be a promotion, but the way that I like to think about it is, what is the best next step for each person on my team? So, Kim Scott in her book, Radical Candor, talks about this concept of rock stars and superstars. Rock stars are those that are very motivated to be specialists in their role. They want to be the best marketing manager ever. And so developing them is, how can we help them gain more competencies and skills in that specific area that they're very interested in? Whereas superstars are more motivated by rising the ladder, leading a team, taking on more responsibility as far as like strategy goes. And so developing that person is more on the art side, whereas sometimes on the rock star side, it's more on the science side. And we need all of us on that team. We need rock stars and we need superstars. Neither are better than the other. But it's important that we know where our team members want to be. Because and I have one of each on my team. So if I go to my rock star and I'm like trying to push her to be a superstar and say, why don't you want to lead a team? Why do you want to do because she's like, I don't want to develop in that area. I want to develop in this area. Right. If I go to the superstar and I say, hey, I think you should get better at this one specific skill. And they're like, why are you putting me in a box? So it's important that we know our team well, can develop in those areas, and then the promotion should follow out of that. So a little bit of a TED Talk soapbox from
No,
me.
I love it. I mean, we're clearly passionate about this topic. Let's wrap on some practical pieces of advice. So for folks that are listening, saying, yes, I'm highly driven, highly ambitious, I want to take the best next step, but Elizabeth's story is not my story, Matt's story is not my story, Holly's story is not my story. Let me share the ways to get promoted, or the ways to move into your best next step. There's 4 things in your control. There's 1 thing out of your control.
Ooh, I love it.
The 4 E's are excellence, express, education, and experience. So excellence, thrive where you're at currently. There is no use pursuing the next thing if you're not excellent where you are today. So that's the first thing in your control. The second thing in your control is express. Share your desire and expectations to want to move and to want to change and to want to adjust. Your manager should know, a good leader should know what's going on under the hood, that they should understand where your desires are, but don't leave it up to them to interpret your subconscious. Express. So excellence, express. Number 3, education. Learn and grow for the role you want today. I call this stay 6 months ahead of growth. By the time you're in the seat, if you do get a promotion, if you're now learning how to do it, everyone's going to be waiting for you to grow and develop, and you're going to have to slow everyone down while you catch up. So stay 6 months ahead of growth by gaining the experience and the education that you can today. And then the final one is experience. You can do this. You can take on stretch projects. You can shadow people. You can figure out what does it take to be successful in that role, even if you aren't already in that role. So the 4 things in your control are excellence, express, education, and experience. And then the 5th thing that's outside of your control is the opportunity, which is you could do all 4 of those things really well. But if the opportunity there isn't available, that's outside of your control at that point. And that's what Holly is describing. At that point, you decide, am I going to stay and wait for the opportunity because I'm still growing and developing and it's the best thing for me, it's the best thing for the team, or is the right thing for me to do to leave? I'll end on this quote because I've always found this really challenging. Someone said to me, what happens if I develop my people and they leave? And the correct response to that question is, what if you don't develop them and they stay? Wonderful. What if I develop my people and they leave, but what if you don't and they stay? As a leader, you are far better off developing and coaching the people in your team, even if down the road they leave your organization, than to have a bunch of people in your team that aren't challenged, that aren't developed, that aren't being coached, and are settling for the status quo. Always pick the former, as hard as it is to lose your best people. So there's my TED Talk soapbox.
Did you just come up with those E's right now?
No.
Oh, yeah.
We've been sharing those for a while.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I must have missed
been
that all
sick
hands
when I
talk.
You must have been sick the day that I did my all hands talk on that.
Oh, that's so good. And I love how you differentiated between what's in your control and what's out of your control, because I think that's what we can get very frustrated. Circle of control versus circle of concern.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So thanks, Matt. So good. I hope this encourages those of you out there that are either trying to lead a team and want to develop them, or just quite not sure how to take that step, or you're sitting there going, I want to get promoted. How do I make it happen? Hopefully you got some good practical action steps in order to help you do that. So thanks, Matt. Thanks for listening to today's episode with Elizabeth Bryant, Chief People Officer of Southwest Airlines. Make sure you connect with her on LinkedIn. She is a phenomenal leader with practical insights that she shares often over there on LinkedIn. We also want to remind you that we send out a weekly email with practical insights for you revolutionizing the world of work. So go to leader.com and sign up for Leader Pulse, our weekly email. And we'd love to hear from you on social media. Follow us, comment, Share your thoughts and what you're learning as you listen along at Leader Inc. You can find us across all social media platforms and also watch this on YouTube, where we've got some behind the scenes, special practical insights, edits as you watch the videos. We'll see you next time.